Updating now, Fox top story. President Trump preparing to make his case for his border wall tonight in a primetime address after suggesting he may declare a national emergency to get it built. Critics say there is no emergency and that it's only a ploy to get around Congress. Analysts say if President Trump does try to declare an emergency, he'll likely face battles both in the Congress and in the courts. Kristen Fisher reporting live from Capitol Hill.
Are using words like tyrant to describe President Trump if he decides to circumvent Congress and declare a national emergency. The House Majority Leader, Steny Hoyer, he put it like this, quote, "I don't think the president has that authority. I think it's analogous to the governments that we've seen all over the world applying martial law to justify them doing whatever they want, to whomever they want, whenever they want to do it." But other Democrats, like Senator Joe Manchin, say that President Trump has a right to do this. He blames Congress for giving too much power to the executive branch.
If the president declares an emergency, he has a right to do that. And it'll probably go to the courts and be contested. If that gets us out of a shutdown, then so be it. I want to get out of this shutdown.
And in just 4 days, Shep, it will be the longest government shutdown ever in the history of the United States. Shep?
Now, we still don't know if the president actually plans to declare an emergency, right?
Yes, we don't know. It's certainly a very big possibility. We know that President Trump has been considering it very seriously. Vice President Mike Pence said that the White House counsel's office is looking into the legality of it. And just this morning, he was asked point blank, do you expect President Trump to declare a national emergency during his primetime address tonight? Here's how he answered.
What I expect the president will do tonight is explain to the American people that we have a humanitarian and security crisis at our southern border.
So he didn't rule it out, but Democrats are already vowing to fight this in court and in Congress if President Trump does decide to declare a national emergency tonight or at any other point in an effort to try to end this shutdown, Shep.
Kristen Fisher, live for us. Thanks. Let's get the legalese of this now. Bob Bianchi is with us. He's an attorney, former prosecutor. Emergency, national emergency, humanitarian crisis. Democrats say there's no evidence. But if he declares an emergency, the courts will decide. Is that how this works?
Yeah, well, eventually it'll get filed with the courtship. But what happened here is that the Congress has given so much power to the president to act in terms of a national security crisis under the law that's really not defined. And there's about 100 laws that allow him to be able to take funds that haven't been dedicated in various areas and to be able to use them for protection of the border, protection against drug smugglers. It allows the Army and the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of Army to build projects that were supposed to be dedicated for here, but if it's a national emergency, they can use the money for over here. That's what the Trump team is going to do. I found it very curious that all of a sudden we started getting away from the idea of concrete walls and started calling them slats and fences. That's parroting language in some of these laws that give the president authority to be able to move that money around. And then when they're using terms like drug smugglers and gangs and human trafficking and terrorists, they're creating the reason why he can say it's a national emergency. Of course, those on the other side are going to say, wait a minute, this is purely a political thing. You're trying to fulfill a campaign promise. Those things do not exist.
No. The campaign promise was that the Mexicans would pay for it.
Fair
that was
enough,
the promise.
Fair enough. But they're going to be arguing that you cannot use these laws and these powers. You're using them as a mask. You're using them as a smokescreen to get through the back door, which you can't do through the front door, and that's where the court challenge will be.
Well, in court, you have to have standing to challenge. Who would have standing, or what entity would have standing?
You know, when you're talking about shifting money for projects that have already been dedicated, perhaps maybe to contractors, or money that's not going to go to the place where it was originally designed but moved over towards building a wall, those people could have standing. People whose property would be affected could have standing. It's going to be a real issue as to whether the Congress has standing, because typically speaking, they typically don't have standing in these scenarios. But I am certain, I am assured, without question, they will find somebody that has got the standing to file the suit to get it before the court.
Well, the government is shut down, or portions of the government are shut down in the interim. Is this a process that could potentially move along quickly? Is it something that might be drawn out?
I think it's going to move quickly because, in essence, what this act is
That
doing,
is, again, predicated on we don't know if he will do this. We know he has said he may, and we're talking about the possibilities if he does.
Well, the National Emergency Act, by definition, means we have an emergency. We have a crisis. I need to act with dispatch. Of course, the other side's going to say, well, you had 2 years to do that with an all-Republican Congress, and you didn't do anything about it. Therefore, that is just a smokescreen. That's a false use of that act. But that's what he's going to do. He's going to move quickly, and I think the courts are going to hear it quickly. But to me, politically, it makes perfect sense. I expect to hear today, here's a date certain. If you don't do it, I'm going to invoke my powers as the president under the National Emergency Act and under one of these sub-acts that allows me to move funds around, to build this border wall, to protect our country because it's a national security interest. And then if I get that, if I do that, he's going to release the shutdown. Now he looks like a hero to his base because he's taking an aggressive action. He opens up government, and now the courts can decide. Remember the travel ban, they tried to do it, and it got knocked down. But then eventually when they tweaked it, it was put in place. So, you know, the lawyers, there's going to be a lot of lawyering. Very, very difficult.
What is an emergency is not clearly defined.
That's the thing about what Congress did here. It is not clearly defined. It is up to the discretion of the president to make that call. That's where the power resides. And courts are very reluctant to substitute their own judgment for the judgment given by law to the executive branch of government in the president.
Bob Bianchi, thank you.
You got it, Shep.